Hey there, year 11s. In this example, we are, for each of the following, complete the square, sketch the graph, and state the range. In chapter 5, a lot of it is contingent on the fact that you can sketch. If you are at level where you can't sketch yet, I would say use your calculator to practice answering the questions like the range and the domain. So for example, in this one, if you were to use a CAS, we would then do something like this. We would say, okay, let's sketch the graph on our CAS. Going back here, going to calculator page, I would define the function. Okay, so you can type define, or you can go menu, actions, define, f bracket x close brackets is equal to x squared minus 4 times x plus 5, right? Then you go control I, the letter I, so control I down here, and you add on a graph, and you can type in f bracket x because you defined it. Now, that's my graph. That's what it looks like, okay? Now you do want to find the key points. You want to find the turning point here, so we'll go to menu, 6, minimum, click to the left of where the turning point is, click again to the right of the turning point, and it tells you it's 2, 1. So, and then we'll need to find the y-intercept, which is when x equals 0, right? So you can do it on your CAS, f of 0, so you're substituting x equals 0 into the equation when you type it like that, and just press enter. So it tells you the y-intercept is 5 when x is 0. So when you do f with a 0 inside, or you're replacing that x, you're essentially saying x equals 0, okay? So I now know that the graph looks something roughly like this. Okay, so you got your axes. You can see that the graph was more like this, and it crosses at 0, 5, and you know that the turning point, which you found out, was 2, 1. So that means when x is 2, the y value is 1. Okay, now looking at this graph, this is where you want to state the range. So the range, can you see on the y-axis, you should only be attending the y-axis here. So on the y-axis, what's the smallest value you can have and what's the largest value you can have? I can clearly see that 1 is the smallest part of the graph. That's as minimum. It goes all the way to the bottom at 1. So the y value is 1. That's the smallest, and it goes on infinitely. So I would say y is an element, so saying it's the range. So the range is an element of 1, so inclusive of 1 to infinity. See what I'm doing? So it's much easier once you can sketch it. If you can't, I would say use the CAS, but yes, you do want to be able to do it without a CAS. You want to be able to do it manually. So if I were to do B as an example, I've got negative x squared plus 4x minus 5. First thing I see is I see this negative. So I know that the graph is going to be upside down or inverted, right? Then to work it out, I would need to find its turning point. And the best way to find the turning point, you can either complete the square, or you can use the formula that we learned back in chapter 3, x equals negative b over 2a. This will tell you the x coordinate of the turning point. Okay, so if you like that, then we can do this method. B is clearly positive 4. So answering the question, negative of positive 4 divided by 2 times a, which in this case is negative 1. And so that gives me negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. So that tells me the turning point has an x value of 2, and I need to find the y value. So I can sub that back into the equation. Y is equal to negative 2 squared plus 4 times 2 minus 5, and that gives me negative 4 plus 8 minus 5, which is minus 1. So that tells me that the turning point is then therefore at 2, negative 1. Okay, so if I were to draw this graph now, we can kind of picture what it might look like. So at 2, negative 1, so when it's 2, x is 2 and y is negative 1, this point is the maximum turning point of this inverted graph. So I predicted the graph to go something like this. So if we were to just talk about the range, remember you only need to look on the y-axis. So look at the graph. Can you see that the y-axis can continue downwards? Because the graph will continually go downwards. And this highest value it can have is right up here. That's as far as it gets, and it goes back down. So -1 is the largest value it can take, and then infinity or infinite negative values as the graph progresses, then the range is an element of -infinity, don't include it, to -1 inclusive. Okay, so that's how you would do example 5.